Hello, I'm Susan Patricelli-Regan. I am the host of Connecticut Valley Views, and I'm delighted to have my guest today is Oz Griebel. He's the chair of SAM Connecticut, which stands for Serve America Movement. SAM Connecticut Task Force is a nonpartisan effort to enhance candidate competition and voter participation and choice via the establishment of open public primaries, ranked choice voting, and term limits. Oz, it's a delight to have you on again as my guest. And give us an update. Where are you with the whole project?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you again. Great to see you and Bill, even though at a Zoom distance. So thank you for the opportunity. What we've done, I'm trying to remember when we spoke last, but in addition to the open public primaries, the ranked choice voting, and term limits was kind of the three-legged stool that we launched to provide, as you say, to enhance candidate competition and provide voters genuine choice at the polls. We've also added our enthusiastic support for expanding the absentee ballot option here in Connecticut for the November 3rd general election. As you know, the governor, under his emergency orders, authorized that for the rescheduled primary on August 11th. But more importantly, we sent a letter to the governor back in, I'm trying to remember, February or March, kind of building off the encouragement by Secretary of State Merrill to the governor to open to expand the absentee ballots, just to urge him to form what we called a voter participation commission, so that it would not only look at what was then the primary back in April, but and the general election in November, but also really instituting the vote by mail option permanently in Connecticut for all federal and state elections, the way 5 other states have done. So that's been added to the queue, and most importantly, and I hope your viewers will do this, is we've established a survey that they can find at our website, www.joinsam.org, of 5 statements around these reforms, and your choices are strongly agree, agree, strongly disagree, disagree, or don't know. Takes you about less than 60 seconds to do it. We've had over 400 individuals take the survey to date, and we'll leave the survey open at least through the end of July. So our focus right now is really to keep testing the waters with what we believe most voters want. And thus far, we're certainly seeing that in terms of the responses of the survey to date. Each of the statements has when you combine strongly agree and agree, to more than 75% of the respondents to date have said that on all 5 questions. So we're looking to build that. And then our goal is to move into a candidate questionnaire that we would send to all candidates for state, Senate, and House offices after the August 11th primaries, asking for their views on this, providing them with the data off our survey, with the understanding that it's going to take a concerted, sustained effort, probably over multiple years, to get any one of these reforms done. So that's a status report of where we are.
All right. Let me just say this. You had a response from the voters, or some of the voters. You're going to be talking to the candidates, and I realize that the legislature is not in session at this point, and we'll have to wait for a bit. But any feedback from either side of the aisle in general?
No, we haven't. We really haven't reached out to the candidates. Excuse me, Susan, directly. That will happen after the August 11th primaries. And I've had 1 or 2 offline conversations with a couple of legislators I know, but it's been very general. Conversation. I think there's a clear understanding that the amount of work that has to go into each of these reforms is significant. The concept of the Voter Participation Commission that we recommended on the vote by mail option is designed to bring all the relevant parties together: Secretary of State, party leaders, and the private sector, civic leaders, and entities that are involved in the vote by mail option. We have in Connecticut, in Danbury, a company that is one of the significant vendors that provides the hardware and the operating systems to states or jurisdictions that use the vote by mail option. And so getting a clear understanding so that people feel confident. There's a concerns, as you know, on the vote by mail option about voter fraud, voter abuse. When you talk to the states and look at the analysis that they've done, they'll have the vote by mail option. Those incidents are few and far between. They're easily tracked and captured. But it's very important that people in Connecticut, voters in Connecticut, feel confident that their vote will count, it will be counted accurately, and that the result of the election will reflect the will of the voters and not by some kind of happenstance in terms of voter abuse or fraud and other concerns that are there. So to me, it's a big part of what we're doing, and we recognize that you've got a lawsuit that's been filed, I think, by 4 Republicans challenging the vote by mail, the expansion of the absentee ballot on the primary. So there are definitely differing views on this, and we recognize it's going to take time on each one of these. Ranked choice voting is a concept that requires a little bit of time to understand.
I think that's key. I think educating the voters as to what it actually means. Yes.
And what, just a background, Susan, on the ranked choice voting. Maine adopted it for the 2018 congressional elections. They're still moving forward with an amendment to their constitution so they can have ranked choice voting in their state elections. And Massachusetts started, and that process started early part of this decade. Mm-hmm. Massachusetts started a similar process. Massachusetts is one of the states, I always forget the ratio, 24 states or 26 states allow voters to petition a question on the ballot. The other 24 or 26 require legislative action first. Massachusetts is in the category where voters can petition, and so they've been working for the better part of 2 years to secure the signatures, which they have now validated. Secretary of State has validated their position. So the question on ranked choice voting will be on the ballot in November in Massachusetts, and they've raised several $1 million now for the purpose first to secure the signatures, and now to focus on the education process, really to get voters who've not been part of the signature gathering process to really understand what ranked choice voting is, what the benefits of it are, how you deal with some of the shortcomings. And that's the kind of thing in Connecticut, because we can't petition a question on the ballot. We have to go through our legislature and educate them.
Well, as far as educating goes, let's just say someone has not taken your questionnaire yet.
Right.
Let's define what's in that. Do you ask them for names, addresses, party net? What do
all we ask for, what we ask for is their email address and their zip code. And the reason for both is that we would like to have be able to communicate with them going forward, because this is an ongoing process. The survey isn't the end point. And then also from a zip code standpoint, we are looking down the road over the next 2 years to work with candidates, work with individuals who believe in these reforms, who are willing to run for the state Senate and state House seats, and are willing to adopt what we call the SAM pledge, which is individuals who believe in accountability, transparency, and working the SAM phrase is working for common sense solutions to issues that matter to all voters. And so the idea of building teams in all the Senate and House districts is something with people who are interested in this approach is part of the process. But right now, we're really eager to get as many people to participate in the survey. We're not Quinnipiac, we're not the Wall Street Journal conducting a poll, and so we're not doing it the same way. And I don't want to suggest that the results of this would be comparable to that. But the idea, if we can get another several hundred people, up to 1,000, to take the survey, then the results, if you will, become more ballot.
Sure,
and
of
give
course.
a better pace a better foundation to interact with candidates for the legislature.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that's what I wanted to emphasize, the fact for our viewers that if they take the survey totally private, you're not giving out any.
Correct. Yeah, we're not looking to sell lists or anything along those lines. Correct.
Right. Well, now the COVID-19 obviously is an ongoing challenge. So do you think this timing is good, obviously, that people can do the absentee ballots? I mean, this seems like a no-brainer for that purpose.
Well, it is. I mean, obviously, as I said, you've got at least one lawsuit here in Connecticut. You can certainly see many candidates, the president among them, laying the groundwork for a potential challenge to the results of the November 3rd election. One of the things that concerns me greatly is, as more states have moved to in the short term, not states like Colorado and Utah and Washington that have been at it for 6, 7, 8 years and have a process in place, but because of the debacle in Georgia, the debacle in Wisconsin, the concern that there will be a second wave, we're already concerned about it now, a second wave of the virus hitting in the fall, the impact of that on people going to the polls, having volunteers to staff the polls, those are serious issues. And so you've got more states now, including Connecticut, looking seriously at this issue. The challenge you have is that because of the short time period between now and November 3rd, there's a certain amount of training that needs to go on. You have to purchase the equipment. You have to purchase the operating software. Vendors have already said they're concerned that if you have not already ordered your equipment, you haven't ordered the envelopes that are tied to each voter, that their ability to deliver is already certainly challenged. And then the training that goes on with people in the Secretary of State's office and local registrars is significant. There's also, as you know, some significant differences among states about when does the vote that's submitted by ballot, absentee ballot, or a vote by mail ballot, when does it get counted? Is it counted based on the postmark, or is it counted when it's received? It's going to have an impact on the timing of the counting of the vote. So Colorado, if I understand their process better, and they've been at it, I think they're one of the first states, they may be the first state that did this. Their system now, the ballot must be received by voting day, and they start counting the ballots as they come in. They don't release the results, but they start the counting process.
Yeah, because you release the results and then people start to get,
I think one of the things we all have to, and I've seen several articles on this, some op-ed pieces and the like, understanding that the election is going to be called on November 3rd, even by midnight, I think is something we all have to understand is highly unlikely to happen if the race is close. And I think you have to assume that the race will be close. But never mind all the other races, U.S. Senate races and the local races and the like. And the concern I have is we went through the 2000 issue with President Bush and Al Gore, and that went into was mid-December before the Supreme Court issued its decision. You had all the recounting and the hanging chads and everything. We have to be prepared as a country, as a state, that these elections, the presidential election and others, are unlikely to be called anywhere close to November 3rd because of the differences of how those absentee ballots are counted.
Exactly. Any thought to putting the candidates' pictures on the ballots? Putting the candidates' pictures on the ballot?
I've not heard that. That's not. I mean, and the point of that would be to make it easier.
Well,
for
some people, just some people, particularly when this kind of thing is going to open up the doors to more people, perhaps running for offices. There's not a lot of name recognition. I mean, if you put a photo, and maybe because there's going to be more social media used, I would think, or somebody running. So certainly not for the presidency. We've got two candidates. I think we understand who those people would be. But, in the state. So, some people will just say, oh, I know which person that is,
Right.
So, I mean.
One of the things that's been talked about in a couple of states, and we've not gone this far down in our current thinking, but when you look at our second statement, we have two questions dealing with open primaries. One is, the first question is, and this is something we've been on for, it was one of the first things we talked about, was opening up the two-party primaries to all unaffiliated voters, which the parties can do on their own. They don't need any legislative authorization. And our argument on that is that those primaries are paid for by all of us as taxpayers. 41% of registered voters in the state are registered as unaffiliated, not in either party. And our sense is if we as taxpayers are going to pay for the primaries, then they should be open to all voters without having to go through the re-registration process you have to do now. The parties are certainly, they've got the right to do anything they want on their own nickels, but on this is there. The point you're raising, Susan, is one that we've talked about having a single. The second question is having a single primary, where the top two, so you have a single primary. Anybody who wants to run, let's say for governor, under certain, I forget what California, what the requirements are, but anybody can run. And California doesn't allow the designation of a party. It's just Susan Reagan. It doesn't say Susan Reagan Democrat or Susan Reagan Republican. for the
right.
very reason that you want people to think about who they're voting for, not simply by party designation. So those are, I think, questions that come up. I've not heard anything about the photo concept that you.
Yeah, I'm just going to hold the application for the absentee ballot, and it does ask you for party, Republican or Democrat. And then there are some questions here, COVID-19, all voters able to check this box pursuant to Executive Order 7QQ. So it's pretty straightforward. You send that in, you get it mailed back to you, you
Right.
vote, then I guess you send it back in again.
If you're an unaffiliated voter, you don't get that opportunity.
That's true. That's very true. Okay. Now, do you feel that this is going to be a major turning point this year with our municipal elections? I mean, how do you see the time frame going? Do you feel there's enough time to get this accomplished?
Well, none of these reforms are going to be accomplished in this calendar year, for sure.
Okay.
The only thing that is open is whether the absentee ballot is made available, expanded absentee ballot is made available for the November 3rd election. And that's the governor has taken the position, I think with the support of the Attorney General or the advice of the Attorney General, that because his emergency authorities expire in September, he can't unilaterally authorize the expansion of absentee ballots for the November 3rd election.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Why you've had this conversation around calling a special session.
Right.
And some of the legislators want a lot of issues to be talked about. He said the only two things that he will call the special session for, are addressing this issue of the absentee ballot for November 3rd, and then the issue on police reform was the other one that he's willing to take a look at. So the only thing that would happen in this calendar year is the expansion of the absentee ballot for November 3rd. Our reforms are going to require, as I said earlier, a lot of discussion, a lot of debate. One of the, I know that there are going to be a couple of challenges to say that they need, for example, this I think is part of the concern of the Attorney General, that under our Constitution, the vote by mail option would require a constitutional amendment, not just legislative action.
Oh.
So these are things, as I said earlier, the main effort to put ranked choice voting in took 6, 8, 10 years.
Yes.
The Massachusetts effort the same way. So Sam, Connecticut is in this for the long term.
Yes.
And engaging people, sustaining their engagement, to know that we're at this in order to get any of these reforms, never mind all of them, is going to take 2, 3, or 4 legislative sessions.
Sure. Well, you mentioned other states and so forth. Just going to refer to recently, you had an open forum or presentation by David Jolly. He is a former congressman and a current NBC News and MSNBC political contributor. He's now the executive for the U.S. chairman. And you and he hosted a Connecticut Zoom SAM presentation on June 10th. Good response? Did you feel you had call-ins? Tell us.
We did, and we did have a good response. I mean, in this day and age, I mean, there's so many things people can do with technology in terms of their choices.
Right.
But yeah, David, this all my interaction with him. He came aboard in March. My interaction with him has all been electronic. Calls and emails and the like. But I can tell you, I've been extraordinarily impressed. I've been very impressed with his integrity, his intellect, his commitment to the SAM values. He's spent, I think, the better part of 20 years in Washington as a staffer on the Hill. Ran in 2014 for an open seat as a Republican, ran successfully for re-election in 2016, and then flirted with the idea of running, much like Monty Frank and I did, running as a petitioning candidate. He is a former Republican, along his prospective LG candidate, former Democrat. They chose not to do it in the end. But David is someone who is, I think, brings such a refreshing perspective to this. Clearly, the fact that he was elected twice, that he's a political analyst that's on television, really elevates the SAM credibility, the SAM brand, the SAM visibility, and it's certainly been helpful to us in the short term here in Connecticut.
Well, he's obviously got the breadth and the depth of the experience to handle it. What about the call-ins now? Were you able to get a sense for the number of people who were watching, or if not that, call-ins? Where did the question?
Well, we knew how many people registered. I don't remember the exact number. We were
Okay.
I think we were just north of 50
Okay.
in terms of people registered. You know, we like a
Yes.
lot of these sessions. You want people to register in advance.
Right.
You know how it's set up, and it wasn't. We didn't do it on a Zoom feature where everybody was seen,
Yes.
but rather just David and I were on the screen,
Right.
and we chose to do it that way so that people would focus on, particularly on him.
Yes.
As he delivered his remarks and responded to questions. Now we had good interaction with the people who did that. I certainly received a number of very favorable comments about him and from people on the SAM Connecticut list. And we're going to be looking to do that until the travel restrictions really allow him to get out and about more than they are right now. We'll probably do a couple more of those over the next several months.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, if you do it again and more awareness of
Right.
the fact that they are there, because again, getting back to the education, people do not participate in things they don't understand.
Right.
People don't like things. If they're not good at golf, they don't want to play golf.
Right.
If they feel that they might come out looking stupid, I guess, or perhaps can't participate. Some people don't like public speaking,
Right.
Because they're uncomfortable with that. So I do think that doing more of those, and then hopefully, eventually, even if it has to be 6 feet apart and so many people to the room and wearing masks and whatever, that it is always good if you can do some sort of live thing. You know, maybe it's going from major town to major town. You know, that is always a good thing if it can be accomplished in a safe manner.
Yeah, I think with the personal interaction, at least for some of us who are north of 50, who really believe that is the best way to communicate.
Yeah.
The technology is powerful.
Yes.
It does enable. So to me, it's not either or. You want to be sure that you have the opportunity to press the flesh, if you will, but taking advantage of the technology to put someone like David in front of a group that you're trying to educate.
Yes.
You want to make sure stay engaged is an important element.
Yeah, and you can replay it. You can take the link,
Correct.
Put the video out there, put it on the website, and so forth. Well, you started to talk about some statistics. So what I have down here is the ratio. It's very close to yours. Registered voters in Connecticut. According to the Secretary of State, this was 2019 statistics. There are 21% registered Republican voters.
Right.
There are 37% Democratic and 42% unaffiliated. Is there a sense, I guess I'm going back to something of the same question, is there a sense of where lies the greatest appeal? I know the Republicans are afraid of the mail-in things and so forth, but do you think the independents, is there a sense for that? Because obviously with such a large section.
What we believe, Susan, is all politics are local, and if you've run for office, all politics are personal. So having run now twice, once for the Republican nomination and then once as a petitioning candidate in 18 with Monty Frank, the number of people who would say to us in 18, particularly as we were drawing in from Labor Day on, gee, you guys are the best ticket, you understand the issues the best, and these were comments coming from other than our children and siblings, that but if I vote for you, Bob Stefanowski will win.
Yes,
or if I vote for you, Ned Lamont will win. Therefore, for spoiler, it's a wasted.
Yes, right.
So what we're looking at here is that what's happened in our opinions, or certainly my personal opinion, is that the divisiveness that we see today in politics at almost all levels, but particularly at the federal and state levels, I trace back to at least 35 or 40 years, going back at least to the Newt Gingrich revolt in terms of taking over the party, the Clinton impeachment. It became where everybody, if you weren't a Republican, you were the enemy. If you weren't a Democrat, you were an enemy. And if you say the sky is blue, I have to say it's black.
Yes.
And the issues get subverted. David Jolly did it. I thought made several excellent points in the video we had with him, the interaction, that the Democrats on immigration will say we want open immigration, open the border. Right. The Republicans will say build the wall, we need security. most of us understand that you have to have both.
Yes.
You can't have a dynamic country, a dynamic economy that we've enjoyed over the last, pick your favorite time frame, but certainly since the Second World War, on a consistent basis, without being open to new ideas. At the same time, you want to be sure that there is appropriate process for people to enter the country and become citizens.
Yes.
Not mutually exclusive, but that's how the parties position the issue. And you either have to, believe theologically that in one view or in the other's theology, and not focus on the issue of what is a sensible immigration approach. The same thing on healthcare. Pick whatever your favorite issues are. You're right in the middle of these, and what happens is it's not only degraded the politics. I think it's undermined our ability to grow. I mean, look at the fact that we haven't had a transportation bill since 1990.
Exactly. Well, I think the people are so aware now of the candidates, what they stand for, and I think the people are very good at making the right decision. I think when given the information accurately and transparently, the people finally make the right decision for the people, not the sell pitch they get from the candidates. The people are pretty good at ferreting all of that out.
But how many people, Susan, tell you that they held their nose and voted for X?
Yes, that's true.
That's very different.
It's often voting.
Having a legitimate third or fourth choice.
Yes, it's often voting for this person to make sure the other person doesn't win. It's kind of a negative participation.
Is to open up the candidates process
and
have legitimate debates. Not say in a case of Bob Stefanowski, we're going to eliminate the personal income tax. Or in the case of Ned Lamont, we're only going to toll trucks. I mean, these debates in terms of how we get issues in front of people, I think have been down to below kindergarten level.
Right.
And they're soundbite oriented as opposed to that. And that's what the reforms are designed to do here in Connecticut.
Well, it's been great. Our time has gone fast, as it always is. It's always so enjoyable to see you, and wish it was in person. But I do want to give your website again, and it is joinsamct.org. And I want to, is there any other contact? Do you want to give email or anything?
No, if you go on that, there's access to my email to my email on it. We respond to emails when they go in, and I think, Susan, just if someone goes to the website, that survey's right up at the top. You simply click on and you go through the 5 questions pretty easily.
So thank you again. I appreciate it so much. This is Susan Patricelli Regan, who I have enjoyed having as my guest today, Oz Griebel. And I want to remind you to see all of our shows on ctvalleyviews.com. Thanks again for watching. Look forward to seeing our viewers again.